welcome back to Retroford. Today we are fitting one of our cast aluminium sumps that we sell, part number Z007, and we're going to run through how you fit one of these sumps. So typically these sumps will be used are a rear drop aluminium sump. As you can see, it comes powder coated and it comes with a full fitting kit, which means you get the oil pickup, main cap bolt, dipstick tube, baffles, all the bracketry, all the bolts, the sealer. So you don't need anything. So first we're going to be looking at the engine, and we're going to assume you've got the sump off it already. Now typically on a black top, which is what this is, the sump is a two-piece sump. You've got the cast aluminium part and then a steel part, and to get to the oil pickup you need to remove all the bolts from the steel part and then remove the bolts from the aluminium part and remove the oil pickup from here. So we've already done that to sort of speed the video up, because yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody can get that part off. So once you've got to this stage, what you'll see is that this is a genuine Ford, well I say genuine, it's a new Ford Zetec engine. We sell these obviously, and we've still got good stock of these, but as you can see, when Ford fitted it, they put some sealer in between the joins here and here and here and here. So with fitting anything that requires sealer or has got a gasket, then the trick is to make sure that it's clean. So you want to make sure that there isn't any engine oil on this or any of the journals. Get rid of all of this. So we're going to get straight into removing that, and the best way to do that is with a scraper. Just scrape that off, making sure you don't get any in the engine at all. I say some of that will just rub off with my fingers, especially if I've got these rubberized gloves on as well. So once you've removed all of that, and you can see over here, there's a little bit here that wants to drop inside the engine. Now, yeah, that'll be your enemy. You don't want that in the oil pickup, so you've got to make sure you get rid of all of that. And you'll see, because there's slight difference in machining tolerances, that sometimes there's a slight step on there, and that requires you to put the sealer on, because it'll try and find its way out of here. So yeah, once we've got all this cleaned up, as you can see, that's all coming off there. We've now removed all the gasket material from the bottom of the engine, and now the next job is to fit the oil pickup. And as you'll see, when this bolts to here, the bracket at this end is sitting in fresh air. So we manufacture a special bolt, which is an extended bolt, which once fitted in there, will support the oil pickup. So we'll get on with fitting that now. First job is to remove this bolt here. Now, just one little key thing is that on some engines where you're going high power, then what you might do is you may change these for ARP type bolts, and they're normally a stud and a nut, which means that for the oil pickup, on the 10 bolts you would have here, you would fit 9 of the ARP ones, and this is made out of a very similar material to the ARP one, so you can use this one where the ARP one, and it's not going to compromise anything. So yeah, that's typically what we do if we've built a high power engine, which we've built a few here. We're running sort of 255 horsepower with an ST170, and that's using a standard crank, but one of these bolts, and the rest of them are ARP. So that's going to be fine. We're now going to get on with fitting that. We'll remove this bolt here. As I say, that'll have to be done up to a torque setting when we put it back in, but I shall show you that. So yeah, remove that, and then with the bolt supplied, fit this in. As I say, there's no washer or anything to go underneath it. That's a direct replacement, but as I say, it's just got the extended head. So once that's fitted, we then torque it up, and you can see with your sump comes a fitting instruction, which tells you the torque settings for the various things. And the torque setting for this part here is 83 Newton meters or 61 foot-pounds. Got the torque wrench here. that's set up to 83 Newton meters, and it's just a simple matter of putting that on there. Always a nice sweeping action, and that's it. So that bolt's now fitted, and we're now ready to put the oil pickup on. As you can see, I'll just rest this on here. You'll see that that locates on there, and that locates on here. You'll notice on the oil pickup that it's got slotted holes in it. Now this is so that it will fit a black top and a silver top. Now the hole relative to the architecture of the bottom of the engine is in the same place, but the holes are rotated slightly. So because we're reliant on this locating it in that direction, we've been able to make this so it fits a silver top and a black top. The difference on a silver top, obviously this isn't a silver top, is that a silver top has 4 of these with upstands on, same as this with a thread on, or similar to this, and they have a windage tray in them. So it's not built into the sump, it's built into the engine. So on a silver top, you'll find that these 4 here all have upstands on, and all you need to do is remove the top of the upstands of the bolts, cut those off, and then put the bolt back in with a 1 upstand for a silver top, so you can fit this. So it comes with a gasket in the kit, and we advise that you use the original bolts that came off the oil pickup, which is what we'll be doing. So I'll get that on there, and then we'll position the gasket and get the bolts in. So now we've fitted the oil pickup, and it's always best practice when fitting anything to a car is to get all the bolts in before you start tightening them down. So you wouldn't want to tighten those down first or these down first. What you want to do is do that incrementally. So you nip that up, nip these up, make sure that it's all seated nicely, and then go to tighten it up so that everything's relaxed then, and it's not fighting each other. So we've got a torque wrench here that's set up to 10 Newton meters, which sounds like hardly anything at all, but it is only a 6mm thread in aluminium. So I'll put that socket on the way around, so we'll turn that around. So we're set to 10 Newton meters, and that's it. You'll hear the click on the torque wrench. So yeah, you can hear that. So that's fitted, and now it's a case of doing the nut up at the back. And for the lock nut on the top of there, we do that up to 40 Newton meters. So again, you'll hear that. So that's the oil pickup fitted, and then we move on to fitting the sump. Before we fit the sump, then again we want to make sure this is clean. Now all I've done is wipe this down, but now that I've got sort of oily stuff out of the way, if you like, it's now time to clean all this face with some brake cleaner. And again, the same with the sump before we fit it. As I say, we've tried our best to make sure there's no debris in here, but obviously in transit sometimes you'll find there's something got in there. So make sure you clean that, blow it out so that it's ready to fit, and make sure you clean inside the journals. Make sure there's no oil or anything inside there. The sump comes with a baffle stroke windage tray, and this fits into the sump. The sump's been machined, ready to accept that. So it's just a simple matter of dropping that in there, lining it up with the bolt holes, and then we've got some little button head bolts that comes with. Just putting those in. What we tend to do when we fit those, because you wouldn't want that to come out, is we put a little bit of Loctite on those before we fit them. Get yourself some thread lock there. You don't need loads on there. If you think about it, there's not an awful lot of room between the threads when it's fitted. So if you put too much on there, you'll find it all squirts out and goes everywhere, and then you end up with some in your oil, which is not good. So yeah, you don't need much in there. So pop that in there. Again, don't fully tighten until you've got them all in. So we'll go along, we'll get all those in. So once you've nipped those up, you don't need to be over tight, but again, best practice is to get them all in, and then that's tight. So once that's fitted, we then move on to fitting the gasket. Now, one thing that some people forget to do is to clean the gasket. Because these gaskets have come out of a mould, then a lot of the time they've used a silicone release agent, and that ends up on the gasket. And the best way, again, you use some brake cleaner, just go around that, make sure it's clean. Yeah, so I've used brake cleaner, I've gone around this and I've cleaned it all, and what looked like it was quite clean, as you can see, there's quite a lot of muck on there, so oil and what have you, and that doesn't help with the sealing of the sump. So the next step is to get the sump and fit your gasket. The gasket can go only one way round. There's little detents in there that allows you to fit the gasket in, and little locators on there. So, but first we're going to clean these journals, and then we're going to put some sealer in the journals, just a bit of extra protection that we tend to do. So the gasket itself, where the aluminium substrate is underneath, you don't need any sealer along there because that's a dead flat surface, and that's got that gasket on it. But obviously here, where the joins are between the oil pump and the rear oil seal housing, you need to put some material on both this the sump face and on the engine face. So I'm going to crack on and do that now. As you can see, I'm filling up that gap there. You don't want to be missing anywhere. Yeah, so now moving on to the engine, and where you need to be a little bit more generous is on those joins. So yeah, typically you come across there, and then there, that's where you want to be particularly sort of generous, and then work your way over the journal like that. As I say, you don't want to put too much on. I've seen people where they've put far too much on, and then it all ends up being excreted inside, and then ends up in the oil pickup, and then ends up losing oil pressure. We've seen that happen before. So that's that side, and again this side, make sure you're sort of not overly generous, but you've got plenty there, and again a sort of zigzag motion over there because it's a little bit wider on this end. And what you'll see is when you pull the sump down with the bolts, that it should just start coming out in a sort of even fashion. You know you've got it right then. So that's that part of it. And then back over here, we're going to fit the gasket. As I say, one end's larger than the other, and yeah, sort of the best way to do is start in the middle there where you've got the little detent that locates it. Same on the other end. Make sure you've got that located in there's holes on there, and you can use the sealer. That'll help you stick it down a little bit. So the same on this end. Make sure you've got that detent in the middle, and you can stick that down. And once you've got that on like that, as I say, try not to get it over your fingers like I am. It's then ready to bring it over and fit it onto the block. So yeah, as you see, I made a bit of a mess of this. I've got it all over my fingers, but yeah, you'll see that will drop on there like that. Once the sump is on, you need to visually check in the end here. Now we've removed the front timing cover and pulley so that we can see in there. Now my advice, if you're fitting this sump, is to do that, because you can visually check and make sure the gasket hasn't fallen out at all. And the same on the back here, make sure that the gasket's in there. And it's now time to put your bolts in. And again, what you want to do is you want every single bolt started before you start tightening anything down, and you want to sort of do it incrementally, working from the inside outwards, and checking what gap you've got, because obviously the sump relies on pushing this gasket down. You need to make sure that you do these up. So yeah, we're now going to go around, make sure we've got all the bolts in. So now we've got all the bolts in, we can start doing them up. And what I tend to use is a ball driver Allen key there on a socket with just a screwdriver type attachment on it. That way you're not likely to over tighten it, and it means that as you go round, you just put a little bit more on each one, and then collectively you'll feel that they're all starting to pull it down. And if you go around that incrementally like that, just keep doing a little bit at a time. You're then not putting any undue pressure on the sump itself, on the aluminium casting, and you'll see it starts coming down. So this is when we move over to the torque wrench next, and we bring them down to the torque setting. So now we're going to go around and do the primary torque settings. As you can see, that's quite long there, and that does affect the torque settings slightly, but for what we're doing, it's not enough to upset the torque settings for the sump. So yeah, we shall go around, and we'll probably find that we're not getting down to the torque settings first go round, and just get a feel for it, go round, pull them all down, and then you'll see that the sealant there is starting to walk out the gaps, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to see too much there, so you'll see a little bit. So it's just a matter of walking round, pulling it up. As I say, that primary torque setting, we're not there yet. And what you find as you do each bolt, then it'll all start coming together, and you'll feel the primary torque settings. So there it goes there, you can hear that. And you say there's hardly any tension on there. That's it, that's just 12 Newton meters. And what we'll do now is we leave this for 24 hours. But before that, once we've tightened all these down, it's best practice. As you can see, if you come around here, you can see that the sump sealer is just starting to walk out the gasket there. That's perfect, that's just what you want. And what you can now do with a glove, probably not with your bare hand, is just push that in round there and then wipe it off with some brake cleaner. As I say, it's just an extra bit of security. It doesn't really need it, but you wouldn't want to have to come back to this job. So as you can see there, that's all that journal fill up. Now what we'll do is use some brake cleaner, and we'll wipe that off so it doesn't look like that. And we'll do the same on the front. Okay, so we've let this cure for 24 hours and now ready for the second lot of torque settings, which is 22 Newton meters. So we shall go around, tighten all the bolts up to 22 Newton meters. So they're just moving a little bit, they are. So yeah, we shall go around that now. I'll flip it over, and then we'll explain the dipstick tube and blocking off the old bunghole. So now we're back on to fitting the dipstick. That comes in the kit. You get the dipstick and the dipstick tube. And the way that the sump's designed is that you can use it in both left hand and right hand drive, because there's a starter motor aperture either side depending on whether you're going left or right hand drive. And there's also provision to put the dipstick tube adapter in either side. Now if you're right hand drive, it goes on the inlet side. If you're left hand drive, then it goes on the exhaust side. So we're going to fit this into here. As you can see, the sump's all machined, ready to take this. This will go in here. As you can see, it's quite close to all of this, but it's designed in such a way. So once that's done up, that's a matter of nipping that up with a spanner. So there's a little copper washer in there, and you need to make sure you've got enough on that so that you squash that washer. As I say, it's machined So once you've fitted that, it's then a matter of fitting the bung in the other side. So that comes with a bung there. And that blocks off the hole that you would use if it was left-hand drive. And it comes with different brackets, which I'll show you in a moment. So once you've got that fitted in there, making a bit of a pig's ear of this, but there you go. We'll now tighten that up. So now we fit the drain bung. The drain bung shares the same thread as that, so it sort of standardises it, if you like. So obviously make sure you've got your copper washer in there and that's seated, and then do that up. So the only thing left to do now is to fit your dipstick. So next we're going to fit the dipstick tube. We've put a little bit of grease around there. As I say, it doesn't need much at all. Drop that in there, swing it round so that the dipstick bracket locates with the crank sensor bracket, and the crank sensor, not crank, cam sensor. Keep calling it crank sensor, cam sensor. So bolt that on there. It says right-hand drive, so that obviously lets you know you put it on the right side. So the trick is to nip that up just finger tight, and as you can see we've got a gap here, and that's where the interference is. So now what we need to do is tap this down to drive it home. So you don't want to be hitting the top of that with a hammer, even if you've got a copper hammer like I've got here. So if you use an old bolt, something with a shank on so that you don't mark the inside, and something hopefully with quite a large shoulder on it, so you can drop that in there, and it's just a matter of having that in its relaxed position and tap it, and you'll see the interference pulls it down to there, and that's where it should be. And then when you do that up, because this has got slight disalignment, what it does is it pulls that and holds it in, but it wouldn't come out anyway because it's an interference fit. So once you've done that up, that fitted, you can remove your bolt. One little key thing that you should do with your dipstick before you push it down is just put a little bit of grease on the top of that, so it doesn't tear the O-ring when you first put it in, because it'll be covered in oil once you've dipped the dipstick a few times, and will lubricate it. But the first time you put it in, everything's dry, you can rip the O-ring. So pop that in, and you can see that pops home like that. One thing to note about when you're checking the oil when you're filling it up, these are 3.75 litres that we put in them, but normally put 375 in, check it on the dipstick. You'll probably find it wants a little bit in it after that. But one thing that, this is the same with all cars, is that if you keep pulling the dipstick in and out, you end up pulling oil up the dipstick tube, and it gives an incorrect reading. One other thing to be mindful of is people assume that you can't read the oil correctly because of this tube and you're not going directly in the sump. But because of the laws of physics, displacement allows wherever the oil level is on the sump will be the same in that tube. So yeah, we've often been asked that question, but yeah, that's how displacement works. So last thing left to do is, you'll note in your kit you get this little core plug here. Now these are specially made for us to block off the old dipstick hole. So if you look around here, you can see this is the old dipstick hole for when the car was front wheel drive and it had its original sump on. So obviously we don't need any of that, but you need to block this hole off. So this is made with an interference fit. I've got a little tool that I made for putting these in, but it's just simply a matter of, you can put these in dry, you don't need anything, is popping that in there and then using the drift just to tap that down all the way to the bottom. So you'll see the note change, that means you've got it in the bottom, and that's blocked that off. So that pretty much rounds it up for the Zetec sump. As I say, this sump we use on lots of different applications: Escorts, Sierras, Capris, anything that runs a sort of steering rack on the front of the cross member and a rear drop sump. You normally find that this has got enough clearance. So yeah, hopefully that helps you when you come to fit your sump.